So, what's the goal of your marriage? Have you ever even thought about that? I never had until this guy.
Today, we're going to explore the answer to that very question. We believe that if you want a marriage made in heaven, you need to have an understanding that it was actually heaven that made marriage. Literally, God designed marriage way back before time began, and then he instituted it in the Garden of Eden with Adam and Eve. And he said this, a man will leave his father and mother and be united to his wife, and the two will become one flesh. Then he gave us a perfect model for marriage in the relationship between his son Jesus, our bridegroom, and us, the bride, his church. In Ephesians 5, Paul's famous chapter on marriage, he quotes that verse from Genesis that we just read about a husband and wife being one flesh. And then he adds this zinger. He says, quote, "This is a profound mystery, but I'm talking about Christ and the church." In the Greek, it literally calls this a mega mystery. So here Paul makes the parallel clear. The covenant between husband and wife is the exact same as the covenant between Christ and the church. So what does all this have to do with the goal of your marriage? It's simply this, that we want the goal of our marriage to be modeled after the goal of our relationship with Jesus.
And the way that looks is just as Christ is the bridegroom king laid down his life for his bride, the church. Scott loves me in a way where he's laying down his life for me, living for my good. And that makes it so easy for me to respond to him like the church, all Christians, all believers respond to Jesus by giving over our love to him and by laying down our lives for him and living this constant oneness and adoration.
So what was Jesus' goal in pursuing us as a bride? Why did he leave the perfection of heaven and come to earth and walk among us to die a cruel death?
He died for the forgiveness of our sins.
It wasn't just that. It was so that we could certainly have our sins forgiven, but it was actually so that we could live an intimate relationship with him. Sin was the problem. It separated us from God. And grace, through Jesus on the cross, took care of all the sin. But the ultimate goal was an intimate relationship with God, now and forever.
God wanted to get his kids back. Sin was in the way, but his goal was always to have us so close.
So Jesus came for the sake of intimacy with the bride.
And that's why I married this guy. I really wanted someone that I could be one with and completely be myself and be known and be loved.
So when we talk about the ultimate goal of marriage, it has to be intimacy. That's the whole thing. Living in close, intimate connection. We're wired for intimacy. We're wired for connection. It's in our DNA. When we really get that intimacy is the main goal of marriage, everything changes. So, for example, the 50-50 paradigm that you hear about that the world holds up as ideal, it gets replaced by a 100-100 paradigm.
Yeah, if it has to be 50-50, then I'm kind of keeping track. Well, I did this for him, so he ought to be doing this for me.
Yeah,
Like it needs to be even.
scorekeeping has no place in a marriage where intimacy is the main goal because it's about keeping your connection, not about winning. So we both are in, all in, 100%, holding nothing back. We would no longer see that having our own needs met is the most important thing in the relationship. Instead, we'd ask questions like, wow, what can I do to keep us close? How can we maintain and grow our intimacy together?
What do you need from me most today?
Exactly. Little things like that. In the same way, demanding my rights or insisting on my fair share gets replaced by looking out for what's best for our marriage and what's best for our relationship.
Yeah, when I feel offended or disappointed, instead of going off and giving a cold shoulder, instead of reacting by keeping an emotional distance, I would press closer to seek to understand what is really going on and do my best to eliminate that conflict.
Exactly. So this week, we want you to think about what can you do to build the intimacy in your marriage? Specifically, what can you do that would bring you closer and that would create a bond of trust between you?
Just go after that goal of intimacy.
Because like we said, when intimacy is the main goal of your marriage, it changes everything. So think about what would be different if you really had intimacy as the main goal. And think about your relationship with Jesus. And how does intimacy with Christ mirror into your marriage?
Think about how you love Jesus and then love like that.
Love like that. Brilliant.